Hello viewers, welcome to the next video of this section using native HTTPS client libraries for RESTful services. In the previous video, we have learned how to check strings with regular expressions. In this video, we'll see how to consume a RESTful interface provided by a sample server using the new native HTTP library introduced in RAD Studio XE8. The server is not HTTPS, but the same concepts apply. We live in an interconnected world. A lot of applications now have to exchange data with remote systems. One of the most commonly used and powerful mechanisms to define a communication interface between software over the Internet are RESTful web services. Usually in Delphi, you can use the Indy suite to access HTTP servers. When dealing with HTTPS, Indy produces some headaches because it doesn't use the same SSL layer the operating systems, but relies on open SSL libraries, so you have to provide a specific version of open SSL for each different OS your application supports, and you cannot benefit from the security updates from the OSIS vendor. This has been a just to keep in mind problem up to April 7, 2014, when the Heartbleed security bug has been disclosed in the OpenSSL cryptography library. This Wikipedia link will say about it. The client approaches that uses OpenSSL have been affected by this bug. The bug has been fixed on the same day by the OpenSSL team, but the problem was still there for all deployed applications. So, to overcome this bad situation, Embarcadero developed the native HTTP client library, which is not based on Indy or OpenSSL, but it simply relies on the OS API to implement the HTTP protocol. So when Microsoft, Apple, or Google releases a new security patch, your application is already updated. Great! You simply rely on the OS security infrastructure and not depend anymore on the OpenSSL DLLs. Now, we'll see how to issue HTTP requests to a RESTful server using the new THTTP client class. There's also the TNet HTTP client component, which wraps the THTTP client functionalities in a non-visual component, but we don't need it now, and the raw THTTP client class is quite high level to be used directly. However, if you want to use the component, the interface is quite similar. While GET and POST are by far the most common methods that are used to access information provided by a web server, the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, HTTP, allows several other methods. Current standard is HTTP 1.1 and is defined by RFC 2616. RFC 2616 defines these 8 methods: head, get, post, put, delete, trace, options, connect. The THTTP client class supports all these verbs, but connect with specific methods that map each verb. We use a sample server called peoplemanagerserver.dproj located in the section 03/video2/server folder. Ensure that TCP port 8080 is available on your system and that your local interbase instance is running. Now, run the server project. The server is not in the scope of this video, so we'll use it just as a black box. However, it handles CRUD and some kind of business logic and searches over a database table called people contained in a sample database called data.ib. Now, we will open the client project, which is located in section 3/video02/client/peoplemanagerclient.dproj. which is in the VCL client for the RESTful service provided by the People Manager server. In the form create event, the FHTTP client is initialized, while in the form destroy is destroyed, and this is the code. Now, to use the THTTP client class, you have to include system.net HTTP client, which contains the class definition itself, and the unit system.net.url client, which holds common functionality relative to a generic URL client, HTTP, FTP, and so on. Next, run the client. Go to the first tab and click on the Open button, and you should see something similar to this. This is the VCL RESTful HTTP client for the People Manager server showing the list of people. So let's see under the hood. Open the main form in the RAD Studio Form Designer and click the BTN Open on Click event handler. Here, DS_People is a TFD mem table, an in-memory table from the FireDAC component suite provided with RAD Studio. So, where the data comes from? Let's check the relevant properties of this TFD mem table. As you can see, on the DS_People are defined some event handlers and some persistent fields. The persistent fields are used to do the mapping between the JSON objects and the dataset structure. Each field has a corresponding property in the JSON objects, and we'll talk about them in a moment. The event handlers allow using the mem table as it was a normal database table, but it consumes the data from a RESTful web service instead of a normal database table. Let's see the code. Just after the dataset is opened, in the After Open event handler, we'll issue the request to the server and get the data. The JSON so retrieved is converted and loaded into the dataset using the helpers of tDataset class helpers provided by the unit objects mappers.pas contained in the open source project Delphi MVC framework, which will be available in this link. Let's go back to the code, and this is the code for it. Now, when we need to delete a record, just before deleting it, we ask the server about the deletion. If some exceptions are raised in the server, the delete method also fails on the client, and the record remains in the dataset. This is the code for it. Here's the code for the delete record on server method. When the user needs to update or insert a new entity in the before post, the event handler executes in this highlighted code. This is the code for the methods used in this event. This is the code for delete record on server. This is the code for update record and server. As you can see, for simple HTTP requests, you can use the shortcut methods such as getResponse and getURL. There are methods that map each HTTP verbs defined in the HTTP 1.1 protocol. If you need to send a more complex request, or if you want to prepare your request and execute it later, you can use the getRequest method. As you can see, the method createRecordOnServer. Here is the example code of the getRequest use case. Let's come back to our application. The second tab of the T-Page control contains all the controls used to do a simple search by ID on the server. Let's write a valid ID in the Edit Search Edit and click on the Get ID button. The code under the button is quite simple to understand now. This is the code. Clicking on the button, you should see the data loaded in the TDB edits. Now you can change the data in the controls and click on the Post button in the small TBD navigator at the bottom. In the Before Post event of the hooked dataset, called DS_Person, there is this code. Here we can use the same method, DS_Person dataset. A lot of stuff in this video. Let's give some more detail on the proposed code. In the source code, you saw some reference to a strange HTTP_status complex variable. It seems strange, but in Delphi system.net, there is no list of valid HTTP status codes as a list of constants, so I added it to the MVC framework.commons.pas unit. There are all the most frequently used codes as defined in this link. So you can write http_status.ok or http_status.notfound without remembering the status code. Simple, but very useful. You can use it also if you want to use other HTTP frameworks. Awesome! We successfully learned how to use native HTTPS client libraries for RESTful services. In the next video, we'll learn how to use System.net encodings.